Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our last episode, we discussed how, during Rimura's battle with the two true dragons, Ciel also focused on the battlefield at the airship, providing timely powers to Xian and Sui when they were in dire straits, turning the tides of their battles. By this point, 3 gates within the 8-gate formation had been broken by Rimura's side. In this episode, we move to the battlefield of the 4th gate, discussing the battle between Primordial Purple Ultima and the Empire's second-ranked Imperial Guardian, the Fist Saint Damrada, as well as revealing the truth about Emperor Rudra. Let's get started. Standing before Damrada was a terrifying yet smiling adorable girl, one of Demon Lord Rimura's subordinates, one of the 7 primordial demons, Pain Lord Ultima. Up until this moment, Damrada was still incredulous that Demon Lord Rimura not only made primordial demons his subordinates, but also endowed them with such significant power. Ultima cheerfully acknowledged that Damrada had noticed this, stating that Rimura-sama had bestowed her with power, and she was now in her prime condition. Damrada's thoughts were racing, recalling recent events when Rimura broke through the Fortress of Dreams to the battlefield, disregarding Emperor Rudra and the Imperial Guardians on the airship, and bestowed 300,000 souls on the 3 primordial demon beauties for their awakening. This feat, unachievable even by Emperor Rudra and Demon Lord Gi, proved just how extraordinary an existence Rimura was. However, Damrada had no intention of conceding defeat. Determined to fulfill his pact with Rudra, it was essential to overcome Ultima in front of him. With this resolve, the battle between the Empire's second-ranked Damrada and Pain Lord Ultima commenced. With a disdainful snort, Damrada's hidden immense energy abruptly surged, his uniform emitting a dazzling golden glow, making him appear like a god of war. Ultima took her stance, ready to face the attack head-on. Moments later, Damrada, transformed into a beam of light, charged towards Ultima. He then swung his right fist, powered by all his might. What seemed to Ultima a mere punch was, in her eyes, a dozen intertwined fist shadows hurtling towards her. Shocked, Ultima quickly retreated to create distance. The arena's ground then shattered as if being ripped apart, accompanied by a thunderous roar, turning into a wasteland. This was the astounding strength of Fist Saint Damrada. Of course, Ultima wouldn't just stand there in shock. She immediately launched a counterattack. Normally, an opponent's missed attack would result in a brief moment of imbalance, exploiting which was key to victory. Ultima dashed towards Damrada, not with magic but purely intending to win through physical combat. Unfortunately, despite Ultima's pinnacle achievements in magic, her physical combat skills were somewhat lacking. Damrada easily dodged her attack, then counterattacked with a spin kick, hitting Ultima as she tried to retreat. In desperation, Ultima blocked the kick with her hands but was still sent flying several meters away. After regaining her stance, Ultima smiled, observing Damrada, who stood quietly in a flawless posture, making Ultima feel that she might not have won without her evolution. Damrada's strength might surpass that of Hinata Sakaguchi. Ultima couldn't help but reflect on the true challenge of these opponents who purely honed one's combat skills. The practice of refining skills to triumph over stronger opponents, as exemplified by Hakuru, demonstrates one of the keys to strength, the flexible application of abilities. Previously, Ultima believed such endeavors were irrelevant to beings of higher power. In this world, the innate abilities of species vary greatly, and as one of the primordial demons, Ultima was born with the perfect dominion over magic. Even merely unleashing her magic power, she was much stronger than Hakura or Gabta, who had continuously trained and honed their skills. Thus, Ultima had always thought that facing absolute power, intricate techniques were useless and unworthy of effort. However, her defeat in battle against Velgrind, one of the strongest true dragons, changed her perspective. Despite Velgrind being a true dragon of supreme strength, she demonstrated exceptional magical control and skill. Even with just 10% of her power through parallel existence, she was able to dominate the 3 primordial demon beauties together, who prided themselves on their magical prowess. This was not only humiliating but also shattered Ultima's worldview. Yet, it was also a stroke of luck, for Ultima witnessed a higher level of mastery in the domain she excelled in. She realized that combining skills with magic could unlock more possibilities. Most importantly, surviving such a revealing battle ignited a burning desire within Ultima to grow even stronger, challenging her previous belief that she was already at the pinnacle of power. At the apex of her insatiable thirst for power, Ultima heard an unbelievable voice.
To fulfill this wish, let me assist you a little bit.
Ciel responded to Ultima's prayer, bestowing upon her the ability to discern the weaknesses of various life forms and, depending on the situation, create corresponding poisons through the ultimate skill, Lord of Deathly Poison. This made defeat seem impossible for Ultima, but the current Ultima didn't wish to overly rely on this newfound power. Diablo had mentioned that merely depending on power given to one would not truly become one's own strength. Thus, Ultima resolved to give her all, not just relying on her innate power but to perfectly utilize her skill proficiency to secure victory. Ultima intensified her power, transforming into a purple light that shot towards Damrada, her formidable force tearing through space and blurring her figure. On the other side, Damrada stepped forward and swung his right fist, intending to meet force with force. His golden punch, accompanied by radiant light, blocked Ultima's movement. Then, as gold and purple lights intertwined, Ultima with her immense magical power launched attacks while Damrada used the skills he had honed over millennia to counter and press. The battle was evenly matched, round after round. Ultima felt a deep joy, whereas Damrada's face turned bitter, realizing Ultima was continuously growing. With her extraordinary talent, Ultima could master any skill with just a glance once performed. Most crucially, Damrada's inability to swiftly defeat Ultima meant the scales of victory would gradually tip in Ultima's favor as the battle dragged on, pushing Damrada into a corner. Then, the decisive moment arrived. Ultima was overjoyed, proudly declaring her newfound understanding of wielding power. Her aura shifted. Having learned enough techniques from Damrada, Ultima was ready to unleash her full strength. Behind her unfolded 6 pairs of bat-like, featherless wings, shimmering with a pale blue light. These wings moved together, forming a fist shape, targeting Damrada with unprecedented energy. Damrada, attempting to dodge, was struck and sent flying upon contact with the fist. Yet the attack didn't end there. After piercing through Damrada, the wings turned back, circling him in an attempt to restrict his movements. Ultima joyfully observed Damrada's frustrated demeanor, while Damrada held his breath, concentrating more on dodging. Although he verbally downplayed the significance of Ultima's powerful fists by asserting they were meaningless if they didn't hit, Damrada internally panicked due to Ultima's flawless form. With no openings to exploit, Damrada decided to create one. Pretending to be a step slower, he allowed one of the wings to pierce his leg. Ultima, revealing a malevolent grin, slowed her attack, intending to toy with the wounded and fallen Damrada. This was precisely Damrada's strategy. Pride is the most common folly of powerful beings, and even Ultima could expose vulnerabilities when confident of victory. Seizing the moment he fell, Damrada unleashed his ultimate technique, Holy Demolisher Fist, targeting the unsuspecting Ultima with all his might. Ultima's face showed shock as she failed to defend in time, and was struck by Damrada's attack. Her body was penetrated by light, disintegrating and gradually vanishing. Just one more strike, and Damrada would have secured victory. However, at that moment, Damrada felt a chilling sensation. The next instant, what had appeared to be the disintegrating Ultima transformed back into a wing. It was, in fact, just a wing that had taken Ultima's form. Mimicking Damrada's move and even its name, albeit altered to Deathly Poison Demolisher Fist, Ultima infused her ultimate skill, Lord of Deathly Poison, into her hand and penetrated Damrada's defense. The battle was decided in that moment. Damrada lost control of his body, unable to even clench his fists as he collapsed, blood spewing. Yet he still glared at the smirking Ultima, stubbornly pointing out that her technique was a hand thrust, not a fist, but conceded the power was impeccable. He suggested names like Red Snake Death Poison Hand or Deathly Bite would be more fitting. After these words, Damrada contentedly gazed at the sky, then smiled with slight regret. He truly lost this time. After millennia of conflict, Emperor Rudra no longer had the chance to wait for a next time. Damrada reminisced about his past. Long time ago, Rudra had asked Damrada for a favor. Jokingly, Damrada suggested that such important matters should be entrusted to Velgrind Sama, not him, lest he incur her wrath. However, Rudra's seriousness was unmistakable. Recognizing the gravity in Rudra's eyes, Damrada realized that after hearing what was to come, their relationship could never remain the same. Rudra confessed that each of his reincarnations consumed part of his soul. As mentioned in episode 32, Rudra's reincarnations weren't facilitated by magic but through a special ritual designed to inherit his formidable powers, granting him a lifespan rivaling that of the true dragons at the cost of his soul's erosion. Continuing on this path, Rudra would eventually be consumed by his own power, ceasing to be himself. He beseeched Damrada to end his life should he ever become unrecognizable as Rudra, for asking Velgrind, his lover, to do such a deed was unthinkable. Damrada was taken aback, realizing he too could not fulfill such a request, yet he could not voice his refusal. It was, after all, the wish of his dear friend and master, Rudra. Offering reassurance, Damrada suggested there would always be a solution and promised to handle the aftermath. This was the solemn vow made between Damrada and Rudra long ago. As time swiftly passed, Rudra one day weariedly admitted to Damrada that he was tired and nearing the limit of controlling the rampage of his Lord of Justice. Ultimately, he mused, absolute justice and evil were not so different. A universally accepted form of justice simply did not exist in their world. Rudra, with a smile, reminded Damrada of their agreement, then sobered up to issue a command. To prepare for the possibility of Damrada's failure, Rudra ordered him to find a successor capable of breaking the Lord of Justice and ending his life. Though Rudra acknowledged the difficulty of such a task, he insisted on making all necessary preparations while he still remained true to himself. Rudra mused to himself that the power of Lord of Justice, bestowed upon him by his master Veldanava, was overwhelmingly potent. He predicted that his next confrontation with Gi might be his last. If signs of his own berserk state appeared beforehand, he instructed Damrada to have no hesitations and to kill him directly. Closing his eyes, Rudra reminisced about the pact he had made with Star King Dragon Veldanava. Feeling remorseful for not being able to fulfill their agreement, he considered atoning in another world if the promise remained unachieved. Damrada, pretending not to hear, silently left the room. Choked by his own blood, Damrada's consciousness returned to the present. His gaze was filled with regret yet relief. Emperor Rudra was his shining hero, the master he revered. The orders to kill his master and to find someone capable of doing so brought Damrada nothing but endless agony. Nevertheless, Damrada indeed sought someone fit for the task, identifying Yuki Kagarazaka, who possessed an anti-skill constitution capable of nullifying even ultimate skills. Unfortunately, Yuki was dominated by Rudra during their confrontation, leading to the mission's failure. At that moment, Damrada was struck by a doubt. Why did Rudra seek to dominate Yuki? If Rudra himself had ordered his own death, he wouldn't interfere with this process unless Rudra was no longer Rudra. Perhaps enlightened just before death, Damrada uncovered the truth. As mentioned in our episode 56, Rudra was once a dreamer, envisioning a united world in eternal peace. He believed humanity could understand each other, eventually uniting under a common will to strive for a brighter future. Striving to be the world's first hero, Rudra endured endless suffering and loss, all to ensure a happier life for as many people as possible. Thus, Emperor Rudra was Damrada's illustrious hero. However, Rudra's ideal met its end before it could be realized. Rudra was no longer Rudra. Tears welled up in Damrada's eyes, leading Ultima to curiously inquire if his tears were due to the fear of death. Damrada clarified it was because he couldn't fulfill his promise. As his life was fading away, Damrada wasn't concerned about his impending death. Rather, it was his unfulfilled promise to Rudra that he found intolerable. It was clear that Rudra had already lost himself, completely dominated by the ultimate skill, Lord of Justice. Despite being on the brink of death, Damrada felt compelled to fulfill Rudra's imperial command, even if it meant finding someone worthy to entrust with this mission in his final moments. Damrada, clinging to his vanishing life, asked if Ultima could bypass him to kill Emperor Rudra. Ultima appeared puzzled by such a request, wondering why Damrada would propose such a thing. Damrada wished to entrust this task to Demon Lord Rimura through Ultima. Ultima, while confused, remarked that she was also on a mission to kill Rudra and found it more fitting to handle such matters herself. Though she didn't respond directly, Ultima took a liking to Damrada, who had taught her the value of skillful combat. As death approached, Damrada recalled another matter, pleading with Ultima to ensure the safety of that boy named Masayuki. Understanding Rudra's situation, Damrada firmly believed Masayuki was Rudra reincarnated. When Ultima inquired about the compensation, Damrada felt reassured. Making a deal with a demon required compensation, and Ultima's interest in the terms meant she intended to fulfill the contract. Damrada offered his soul, including all his battle techniques, as payment. Ultima, though inwardly delighted, outwardly deemed the reward barely satisfactory. With a smile, Damrada passed away, leaving behind his legacy to Ultima. The Fist Saint's life came to an end, giving rise to a new Fist Demon. Alright, that's all for this video. In this episode, Ultima's exceptional ability to learn and her desire to improve her combat skills were highlighted. Damrada's last words revealed the truth about Rudra, who was no longer himself but had become consumed by the ultimate skill, Lord of Justice. The mention of Masayuki once again brought attention to Damrada's belief in Masayuki as Rudra's reincarnation. The story of Rudra, a complex character, will be further explored in future episodes. In our next episode, we will focus on the battle between Primordial Demon Carrera and Tatsuya Kondo. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.